first ever radio transmission started? Which city? It's Mumbai. I think Radio Club of Mumbai was the first to start radio transmission in 1927. Okay, so what lies ahead in the future? We have seen how radio has survived, past almost a century. And what lies ahead in the future? We would like to understand from this stars in the industry, Ab Thomas and Ramesh Menon. And Sayugita has given us a very interesting topic, uh, roadmap ahead. Okay, so I think the content is the most important thing for all kind of media, but I think for radio, it is all more important, because it is an audio, right? And whether it is music, is entertainment, interviews, or maybe like news, you know, it's a content which keeps engaging your audience. So I would like to understand, from you, Ab, uh, what content strategies have worked for you so far, and how it is evolving over the years, and what is the roadmap ahead?
Okay, if you don't mind, before we jump into content, I think we should put things in perspective, right? I just recently saw some research studies of radio in the US, of audio in the US. 69% of the ad revenue still goes to AM and FM. And AM is also big in America. While the share of ear of FM is about 35%, 70% of the revenues are still going to radio. All the hype around digital audio is somehow not getting the revenues that it requires. If you were to look at India, my estimate is that 80% of the revenue goes to AM and FM. Barely 20% goes to digital audio. While we understand that the whole pie is under stress, there was a time when radio used to be 4% of the ADEX. We're probably now slightly over 2% because the rest of the mediums are growing faster. But this pie is also growing. So I don't think there is any basis on which one can say that radio pie is shrinking, or what is going to happen to radio, and is digital going to take over radio. I don't think that there is any basis to believe that. Secondly, the composition of revenues in radio have changed, right? There was a time when probably 95% of the revenues were coming from FCT spots. Today, the amount of money that comes beyond spots is probably 25 to 30%. And we project that in another year's time, 40% of the total revenues will come from beyond radio. So this huge opportunity that has come up because of the whole growth in digital consumption is actually the opportunity for radio. While the core of 50 to 60% continues to grow at 10 and 12%, the balance 40% is growing at really fast pace. And when I see revenues of some of the streaming platforms, we 3-4 of the bigger networks make more money out of digital audio than they do, right? So monetization of the other thing is a big challenge, and it is the large networks with large sales teams with strong advertiser connect, with great local insights, great talent. All of us have 100+ influencers on our team, and that is what is driving this whole growth of radio. So if anyone's thinking that a downward spiral, you're wrong. Like, you should analyze the books of all the large players, and you'll see that there is growth coming. Yes, the nature of the businesses change. So the first part I think we should establish, because it's everyone here thinks that, oh, we are on a downward spiral. Monetizing digital audio is a challenge everywhere, including India. And Ramesh, who's doing a lot of great work in that space, will elaborate on that more. And the radio networks have the advantage of being able to go out and monetize this, right? So this is one point I wanted to say before we jump into content. Yes, consumption habits have changed. So people are consuming content very differently from how they were doing, say, before COVID. And therefore, if you talk about how has content changed? Content needs to now be omnipresent. So you have to make sure that the content can work across multiple touch points. Normally, the same audio content doesn't work on another medium, doesn't work on social media, doesn't work on this, but the smart creators and the smart radio jockeys know what to work on what medium. So that is a clear difference that we've seen. We've also seen radio is not used to building IPs, right? Because 85% of our content belong to the music labels. But now with omnipresent distribution and availability across platforms, all of us are focusing on building our own IPs. So whether it's regional IPs, local IPs, and these IPs are gaining a lot of traction, and you're able to monetize them across multiple touch points, and you're able to build larger and larger IPs going forward. So content is now being looked at as multi-platform. Yes, there is a video bias in this country, right? And YouTube continues to be the biggest digital platform for audio consumption as well. And all of you all would have encountered that. So when we're creating content, it's about creating it for multiple medium. Every podcast today has a camera in it as well, right? Because people also want to see the way it's moving. Us purists will hate it, saying, "Hey, it's audio, and why do you want to see the video of the audio?" But so these are some of the changes that we are seeing, and it's about multi-platform distribution and consumption, and the content needs to adapt to that platform.
Wonderful insight. Ramesh, I would also like you to share your perspective on the sector overall and also your content strategy.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. I think the critical thing is that when we've been in an industry for a long time, one tends to get sort of siloed in it and start thinking of it as the be all and end all of everything. And sometimes when you speak to RJs and so on, they keep thinking that, it's about radio. To me, all these businesses, whether you're on television or radio or digital or anything, it's all about content. There is only one business, that's the business of content. And the mediums can change, platforms can change. Today, Meta is there, Facebook is there, tomorrow it may not be there. It doesn't really matter. It's really about content. Are you creating the kind of content that consumers want to listen to or view at the point of time that it exists? Is all that matters. So all of us in any particular industry, whether it's a television industry or the same discussions could happen in the television industry, because many people are not even watching television now. You ask a young person, they're not watching, they don't even have a cable TV connection. They don't have a Tata Sky or a Airtel Digital or whatever it is. So content consumption habits are changing. Content is the only permanent thing. The medium or the platform does not matter. And that's really the way we need to rethink radio also. Let's look at ourselves, and we have the best creators. I'm not a radio person, for a long time, but I've been here 3-4 years. But I think the most creative people are housed in a radio company, right? And they don't need to be creative. There's that much creativity that you can deliver to radio. There is so much more out there in this world that you can utilize your creativity for. And it's really about how you can take your creativity and create content for the universe of listeners. And that's really what content strategy, business strategy for the future needs to be. And personal strategy for the creators in the radio company also needs to be. Yeah, how can you create content that listeners and viewers can view or watch or listen to, irrespective of medium and platform? And it doesn't matter if radio doesn't exist or doesn't matter if television doesn't exist. It could be something else tomorrow. It might be all driven by satellite, but we are still content creators. And we have brilliant content creators in all of these radio companies. But some of them are getting siloed by thinking of themselves as radio creators. We are content creators, is my view, a slightly outward in view of the ecosystem right now.
A very important point you made, like you are content creator. And I would also like to know, how has the audience demography changed over the years?
So unfortunately, we don't have too much of research on radio. But whatever studies that individual radio networks are doing, and more importantly, the kind of insight we're getting from the digital data which is currently available. Like, for example, if I were to go by digital download of music, the share of Bollywood music has dropped from 80-85% to about 60-65%. Independent music has gone up. So a lot of these changes are happening in terms of the taste itself. Uh, Earlier, we came from a school where we said that we will only play after the song has become familiar. We thought radio was about hummability. If I know the song and I can hum it, that's when I should start playing it. But today, the audience is trying to discover music, right? So all of us are now more ambitious in terms of saying, let's now break new sounds, introduce them to newer sounds and stuff like that. So a lot of these things have now changed in the way the consumption is happening, right? And one needs to bear that in mind as you are creating content. And like Ramesh rightly said, it's all about content. And if there is good content, people will go and seek it, right? Wherever it's getting played out.
Yeah, Ramesh, I would like to understand the advertising thing and how advertising has evolved on the radio, and you are basically dealing with digital radio. So how different it is on digital radio compared to traditional radio? And also if you can share some case studies with us.
I don't think there's anything called digital radio in India as yet. So there is digital audio, which is podcasts and so on, but there is no digital radio, and unfortunately, in the country. And with the way regulations are and all of the statutory requirements are, I don't think it'll ever come unless some dramatic changes happen. Uh, Given that, I think ad agencies, and I don't think ad agencies also exist anymore. It actually completely controlled by media agencies. And when the RJs are talking about ad agencies, I thought I was going back to the 90s and 2000s, discussing what ad agencies are doing. Ad agencies don't have, any connection with us anymore. It's really about the media agencies, and they have no clue about all of this stuff except data, right? They have data at their thing, which is, the listenership or I mean, for radio listenership doesn't really exist, but for everything else. And they are only in their Excel sheets, right? And how do you make sure a person who's not probably a radio listener, not probably a television viewer, sitting from morning 9 to evening 9 and crunching data on Excel sheets, delivers to you what you want for your consumer is the biggest challenge that there is. Right? Most of them have no clue about what it is that consumers are listening to. Most of them have no idea what consumer interests are or how they are changing. And they're living in a world of their own. And how we can convince them about it is the perception that we build. How good your sales team is in building that perception is all that matters. So that's really the big change that's happened. Earlier, you could go to an agency, they would create campaigns with you. All of that era is not there anymore. So there is an entire ecosystem which is unconnected with creativity, which is actually telling you whether you're to advertise or you're part of the advertising plan or not. And that is a big challenge, I think, the radio industry and advertising industry or the media industry as a whole is facing.
Very important point you made, and I would like to understand.
So just to add to that, if I were to see how advertising sales has evolved, earlier there was a time when we were selling spots. We were saying we have so much inventory, this is the kind of content, so let's kind of buy spots with us. From that, we moved to selling audiences, and we said now we have audiences, and we can give you different cuts and different demographics, and you can target your audience better. But now I'm clearly seeing that we have moved to the era of solution selling, right? Brands are interested in solutions that work for them. So we've become more evolved solution sellers. And depending on the brief, increasingly brands are beginning to trust radio networks with deeper brand briefs. And we are then able to create a solution that works for it. So that's what we are trying to do. So when I'm saying that from a 90-10, we are moving to a 60-40, it's because of the solutions we are able to create for brands, and which is where the whole pie is growing, right? So the profile of the media sellers, and I started up as a ad sales guy. We were hustlers. We knew this guy has 20 lakhs, let me go put 30 out of it. Right? We were all about deal making. And for us, we didn't really worry about content. Whatever the client liked was great content. Client didn't like this idea, so throw it, take the next one. To us now becoming strategic brand partners, using data, using account planning, using creative solutions to come up with a solution that works for the brand challenge. And radio being local makes it a big thing. We've got one of the really interesting briefs which we worked and cracked was a brand saying he sees East UP as a rational market and West UP as a emotional market. And he's saying the same toothpaste gets perceived differently in both markets. Because you're local, can you deep dive and come up with a brand solution for us that'll address this problem? That's the kind of brief we're working on. And so we're all becoming solution providers. We're becoming brand consultants because we have a high reach medium, we have a high impact medium, and it's local. Right. So
It's quite interesting.
that's the shift.
Yeah. Ramesh, your perspective on, personalization?
I completely agree, and that's really where we need to work extra hard to build that perception in people's minds and provide the solutions for advertisers. And there is, I mean, we still, I think the radio business more than any other business is really still a bunch of hustlers trying to, crack a deal, trying to get business where there none exists. And that's the biggest challenge that will be there going into the future as well. As clients get more and more, look at how marketers have changed. A marketer cannot work today without data that comes out of a box, right? So the moment he does a campaign, immediately if he doesn't get data, he has a challenge. And he's not able to convince his boss that he's done a good campaign. And his ultimate objective is to convince his boss that, boss, the campaign has worked. But unfortunately, with the kind of things that we sell, we need to build perception and we need to build loyalty. We need to build trust. We need to build all kinds of fuzzy stuff without the data. And that's the biggest challenge that sales teams in radio companies have, because they are fighting against the odds, trying to convince a client about how I can give you a better solution than somebody else. And the other solution has data that comes out immediately, which says, here it is. And that if we can crack that challenge of getting data to support your solution, then I think we'll be in a far better place than we are. And that's really what the future has to tell. I don't know whether it'll happen or not, but so that's really the biggest challenge.
Yeah. So now I think everyone is talking about programmatic. So,
and in fact, most marketers have become lazy marketers, because in our days, when we were doing brand management and marketing management, we had to really work. Our gut was as important as the Excel sheet that was in front of us, or the data we got from somebody else, or we had to interpret data very differently. But today, the guy, media planner, sitting there is just putting some drop downs and checking some data or getting data from Google on his last campaign and saying whether it's successful. So there's no room for creativity, intuition, and all of that stuff, which really makes a difference between good marketing and ordinary marketing.
But are those measurements correct? I mean,
nobody knows. I mean, nobody's got they're actually delivering impressions that they're giving or not. Nobody knows. As long as I can convince my boss that the impressions are delivered, that's more than enough. Why do I need to bother whether it's real or not?
I think measurement in all media is in crisis. And so everyone is talking about, programmatic. I would like to understand from you how programmatic advertising is being utilized in radio and what opportunity does it offer, for revenue growth?
Programmatic, I think in India, specifically in audio, doesn't exist. If you look at all the digital, audio digital platforms, their money comes either from direct brand sponsorships and brand integrations, or it comes from some direct sales that they do. But a bid-based platform based programmatic uh, sales is very, very small. Now, there are attempts, quite a few people are aggregating audiences so that they're able to. Currently, see, the size of the audience is very splintered. And therefore, till the size of the audience reaches a critical mass, and there are these aggregators who can then execute large campaigns, programmatic is a concept that everybody throws around, but where's the volume? Right? Now I can see two, three large platforms trying to aggregate audiences across platforms, which then makes it critical mass to monetize. And it'll probably start. This is my uh, impression of programmatic.
Yeah, and your
No, so I started podcasting business 4 or 5 years ago. And then 3 years ago, I tried to set up an ad engine for delivering programmatic advertising to for podcasting. People realize that podcasting will never become, will never become a big enough thing unless there's monetization. And monetization will not happen. We can't keep display advertising or equivalent of display advertising, which is sponsorship or whatever that. So we have to get programmatic advertising, and we tried to set up an ad engine for programmatic advertising. Uh, I have failed, and I completely failed every time I try to set something up on programmatic advertising. Multiple people have come into the country and said they're doing it, but that's failed. Spotify has been, pushing their ad engine called Span for the last few months. That also has failed. So programmatic advertising on audio is going to be a big challenge. I don't think it's going to come that easily. India will still survive on the equivalent of display advertising, or you still do ads, and you go to on a sales call, ask a client for money. He stitches the. I mean, he gives you the ad money, and then you stitch it in. I mean, nothing is automatic, nothing is personalized. So that's the way advertising will continue for some time in the space, in the digital audio space. I don't think it's changing anytime soon. So
is it working well abroad?
it is. I mean, programmatic monetization on podcasts is pretty much the way that advertising happens in the US. Not much anywhere else. I don't know how long it will take to come to India.
Okay. So I'll come back to you, Ab, very quickly. But let me ask Ramesh first. Which emerging formats you foresee, shaping the industry in the coming years?
I think the most important thing in the industry is to remain agile and be open to any format that can come. Which is why I started saying that we are content creators. Doesn't matter if tomorrow there is no radio and there is no television and there is something else. Whatever we are as content creators, we have to be ready for the format, ready for the medium, ready for that platform, so that we satisfy the need of the listener or the viewer at that point of time. So be absolutely clear that things can change dramatically, and be prepared for the change. And that's really the only way that I see things happening in the.
Things can change dramatically. Ab, your point of view?
Yeah, so we are approaching this from the other side. We see ourselves as solution providers and says, your brand has a marketing challenge. Tell us, we'll try and come with a solution. We get success because we have a huge reach on our medium. If I were to go sell some of the other digital variations standalone, we don't get too much success. But moment I say, hey, do a podcast with us, and my radio can actually drive audiences to it, then there's a story. So it's all. So our approach is solution creators, solution sellers, and it's all based on radio. That's why people acknowledge us. If I go and say I will create a gaming a solution for you, they'll say, "What do you know about gaming?" But moment I say, "This is my gaming partner, and I have this huge reach medium which can drive audiences," I have a proposition.
Yeah. Since both of you are, very seasoned leaders, so I would also like to know from you, what are the major challenges that radio industry is facing at present, and do you want any changes from the government?
So I'll answer. I mean, I think I've spoken about this for 20 years now, and the narrative seems to not have changed too much. But I sometimes, honestly, I mean, must be my age. I sometimes wonder about the legacy we're going to leave behind, Ramesh, in terms of as a as an industry, we have seen industry drop from 4% to 2% the RX. We have not managed to create a measurement system which creates some level of accountability. We all wax eloquently at forums such as this that how we have to be accountable and we must do it, but we never agree on anything that comes close to measurement. We shy away from accountability, and therefore that's one. Second big challenge this industry has is devices itself, right? There have been attempts and where we are trying to get devices, either get the FM activated on mobile phones or make other devices available so that it's convenient to listen to FM. So unless the third is obviously the whole music rights domain, every other country has a mirror of the FM feed playing out on the digital as well. And I'm talking about live radio. They only have on-demand audio, right? You go in and there's hardly any live radio. Actually, there's no live radio. So we need to find a solution where we can make this device constraint go away. And we need to find a solution where the music rights on at least on a live digital radio becomes a workable solution. So unless we address three of these or four of these key issues head on and find a solution, I think we're leaving behind a very sad legacy.
Yeah, so I have mentioned, measurement thing, device, and music right issue. Would you like to add on?
So there is music rights, measurement and all of that. And there is also the fact that we are the only industry that pays such a huge license fee, right? And I think unless that changes, the profitability of this industry will never be close to what any other industry has. So if a person has 100 crores and wants to invest in something, there will be far better options to invest in than the radio industry. The reason that, I mean, I can speak for myself, 30-40% of my revenue actually goes to the government as license fee, right? Depending on where you are in the country and what license you have, you're paying significantly large. And there's no industry in this country which actually pays the kind of license fee to government and is controlled. And you're competing with people who have no control. A digital guy can do whatever he wants, play whatever he wants, create whatever he wants, and we pay the license and get control. So that's really the biggest challenge that is there. And hopefully something will happen on that, because the TRI has recommended that should change. But, before the recommendations could happen, the elections happened and, heads moved. So it's still in the open. That changes, everything else that we're talking about can get done, because there will be enough every radio company makes to invest back in things that Abe was talking about, because that's really the to the problems of the industry. The only big problem is that we're still living in our well, right? And we're not seeing the larger picture. And if unless we start looking outside, or at least get a treetop view of what's happening in the world, I think the radio industry will struggle.
So 30 to 40% of your revenue going into license fee. That's a huge amount. Ab, you would like to add something? The same for you?
It's similar. See, what has happened is earlier when we moved into a revenue, I remember in phase 2, when it was a fixed, or phase 1, when it was a fixed fee model, where you had to pay a flat fee to the government. Then we moved into a revenue share, and that was amazing. I mean, overnight, all of us became profitable, and we were paying 4% of our revenue to the government. So it worked well. It works well because in a market where you make good revenue, you pay higher revenues to the government. And in a market where the revenues are very low, you pay less. So that works. Then there was some real indiscriminate bidding by some of the radio operators on the phase 3. When they overbid on the value of the markets that they picked up, their second and third frequencies, and the license fee is linked to either 4% of your revenue or 0.25% of your highest bidder. And because there were high bidders which were beyond being reasonable, all of us in the main cities, which is where our revenues are not going by the revenue share. We are going by the share of that indiscriminate bidder. So therefore, costs are really high.
Which is more. The rule
Hugely
is
more. We are not operating in more.
Okay.
So we can't work this on a MG model. This has to be a revenue share model. Even when we talk about digital rights, the current discussions are saying, give me a flat so much. I don't care how much money you make. You can't operate that way. We run a business. Unless it gets into a reasonable revenue share, we make more money, we'll obviously share more money. This won't move ahead. And
yeah, I think we should be reasonable and, rational, to industry to grow. And what is exactly industry doing, to address this issue? Are you meeting with the new minister? And
we're doing all that we can do, and hoping for good sense to prevail. That's all.
So, Dom,
including getting self-certification certificates.
That's the latest.
Yeah. Okay. So now the last question, I would like to know what should be the long-term strategy, for the growth of the radio sector from both of you?
So I think we've all been very lethargic and lazy when it comes to digital. There are a lot of new technologies which are evolving globally, and people are adopting that. For example, there is a lot of work happening in car audio, right? The kind of work that's happening in car audio is huge. I kind of saw a demo where within the 4 seats of the car, they found consumers are consuming different kinds of content. So they're creating seamless capsules where you can listen to 4 different kinds of audio and it doesn't interfere with each other. So lots of work happening there. The dial of the radio has been completely transformed so that you can, on the dial, you can get both digital and FM radio, and there's a tracking of who's listening and all that. So lots of stuff is happening there. But we've somewhere been very lethargic to all this. We just tick boxes. Chalo, we also have a website. Chalo, we also have a social media thing. So unless now government is trying to push us into digital audio broadcast, it's a great technology, but the challenge is you need devices. So unless the ecosystem of the devices come in, it's a difficult sell. How do people listen to digital audio broadcast? There are a couple of technologies on that. So these are stuff that because we have not really put our heads together and addressed, these opportunities are passing us by. All of us are driven by quarter numbers. So our focus is saying this quarter we should deliver this number. So
yeah, I think we are working on medium term.
Yeah, and my view is that at the end of the day, we all have to be looking at ourselves as content creators. We have to look at ourselves as creators first. Whether this is the medium, the platform, it really doesn't matter. If we keep ourselves open to new mediums and new platforms, we'll all survive. I don't think we should get too caught up with whether I am a radio person or a television person or a Facebook person or an Insta influencer or whatever it is. Whatever the medium exists, whatever the platform exists, I am a content creator and I will survive. That really needs to be the philosophy of every single creator in the room or in the industry, saying that it doesn't matter what happens in the future. I'll survive because I'm a content creator and I could create good content for my viewer.
Wonderful. I would like to have a rapid fire round if you allow me. Should I start with you?
I think it's better.
Okay. So, the one conspiracy theory you kind of believe in.
conspiracy theory. So the theory that audio is far, far more impactful and far, far more powerful than video.
So wonderful. Given a chance, who would you like to give your voice to?
My voice too.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody. There is nobody. I can think of some conspiracy theories. I think BCCI made sure that Australia was kicked out of this World Cup. For taking the last one. That's it.
Okay. Next we have, what is the most quirky song on your playlist?
Most
Quirky,
quirky,
funny, yeah.
quirky song.
I heard something the other day. Some kal raat ek chor aaya tha mere ghar pe or something like that. That I think was the most quirky song that I kept listening to for some time. Was just I think was the artist.
So I mean, you're right. I mean, none of these songs last, so you can't remember them the week after. So it's extremely short-lived. So I'm still very much a old era classic rock kind of person. These things I can't even recollect the second time I hear it. So
Okay, no problem. What is the biggest blunder you have seen on radio?
Radio.
Yeah.
I can talk about a lot of it, but I think the biggest blunder that we're making is not, uh, getting our glasses corrected. We need to look out into the future and see what the future of content is. And if radio companies look at that way, I think they have the best creative people in the industry. I don't think any. I mean, I talk to a lot of startups, and a lot of startups come and say we've created a content company. I think what can they have 10 people there and they create a content company. We have 100 people in our organization, and we're still not calling ourselves a content company. This guy with 10 people in a startup is calling himself a content company and going around, selling giving his card, and they don't even give cards nowadays. Giving his introduction to people. So that's really something that needs to get corrected in radio companies.
So you went on a serious note. I was looking for lighter note. Okay.
sorry, what is the question again? I can't go.
The biggest blunder you have seen on radio?
I think as an industry, collaborating is far more stronger than competing. And for the longest time, all the large networks believe we are competing with each other and not competing with the category, right? This whole audio versus video and all that is we've not looked at the larger issues. We said, oh, I have money, so let me pay a higher music right, so I can lead. So that we've done for 20 years and we've still not recovered from that.
Okay. What is your most favorite advertising jingle?
Do they have jingles anymore?
Yeah.
I've forgotten that.
Old.
Washing part of Nirma, maybe.
Okay. Yours.
Badal ke to dekho.
Wonderful. So it was really an insightful and an interesting talk. And thank you for taking time out to come to the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, what a great session. That was a big round of applause for both our leaders, e4m and Ramesh Menon. And may I request Kanchan to give a small token of appreciation from the team side to both our leaders. Just like the framing, perfect. And we just request the three of you to come together for a group photograph. Remember, for all the brand teams, everyone present here, the hashtag is hashtag Golden Mics, hashtag e4m Golden Mics, which you can see right on the stage at the back. So ensure you keep tweeting. We've got Golden Mics now on the screen, so continue with that hashtag and continue with the stories being told. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead to our next session. Let's talk about audio content, from radio to podcasts. Now, this discussion will trace the transformative journey of audio entertainment and the information dissemination. This discussion explores how radio, which is a relevant medium, has evolved into a diverse and on-demand world of podcasts. Let's delve into the shift in consumer preferences, the rise of niche content, and the democratization of broadcasting through digital platforms. Let's hear our industry pioneers as they highlight the technological advancements as well as the creative innovations shaping the future of audio content consumption. Just by show of hands, if I may ask the audience today, how many of you hear or listen to at least 3 podcasts? Anyone else at the back or right? 2? The ones who for 3 can also continue listening for 2. Or would have heard 1 podcast at least. Okay, that's around 80%, 90% of the audience. So with that being said, let's call upon our leaders on the stage. First up, a mighty round of applause for Anthony, who's founder and director of e4m Talkies podcast. Let's give him a big, big round of applause as we invite him to the stage. Thank you so much. Rajesh, the founder of Automatic, let's give him a warm round of applause as we welcome him. Thank you, Rajesh, for joining us today. Anurag Srivastava, Managing Director, Shine Entertainment. Gaurav Bagaukar, co-founder and CEO of Cooper.ai. And curating the session and moderating it forward, let's welcome Nikhil Michandani, former CEO of Vishal Bharadwaj Films and founder of Greek Entertainment. So Nikhil, we leave it in your able hands to conduct and curate the conversation forward. Looking forward to that.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you. So, thank you all for joining us. It's been I think this panel needs no introduction. We've been fortunate to have everybody here. There's stalwarts in the content space. As you know, Ramesh said earlier that it's the world of content, and this is the world of content. We've had, I think cumulatively over 60, 70 years of content creation development on this panel, and no better than you to, talk about it. Just so that I bring in a little structure before we start. I think we will focus on podcasts. What are the different types of podcasts? There is audio drama or radio plays and knowledge-based podcasts. What goes into the making of a successful podcast? Talent, writers, celebrities, etc. Thereafter, what do you do with that podcast? Where do you distribute it? And across today, there are multitude of platforms where you can distribute your podcast. And how do you monetize that, if it is monetizable, and how? And basically the commercial viability of that. So I know I was talking to Mantra earlier, and he's a champion of the audio medium. So why don't we start with you, Mantra?
Sure, thank you so much, and good afternoon and good evening to you all, actually. Different kinds of podcasts, different kinds of verticals within that medium you spoke about. Exchange for Media, they put up a post on LinkedIn a couple of days back where they were announcing the panelists who are going to be there and all. The caption read, "Video didn't kill the radio star." And I'd like to say, think again. A couple of years back, the word podcast was always associated with the audio medium. Sure. It's podcast. I mean, quite literally, the word clearly says it's that pod, the air pod that goes in your ears, and you broadcast the podcast on it. Where does it convert into a visual medium? I think very few people would be able to pinpoint on that, over the years, especially in the last, I actually didn't want to miss out on a few things. That's why I put down stuff. उस टाइम पर तो लोग बोलते थे कि हमें रेडियो की लगी पड़ी क्योंकि लोगों ने पॉडकास्ट सुनना शुरू कर दिया है। अब पॉडकास्ट की लगी पड़ी क्योंकि लोगों ने पॉडकास्ट सुनना नहीं देखना शुरू कर दिया है। एंड आई हाउ डिड इट हैपन? एंड it's not a telecast, it's a podcast. And podcast primarily became a rage in the West, as you all may be aware, is when people who were used to long commutes, when they were on the roads, they would want to listen to something which is not music. जब म्यूजिक नहीं सुनना, they want something that would enrich their life. They would listen to an audio book, they would listen to an audio drama, they would listen to a podcast while driving their car, while doing their household chores, while working out in the gym, or while that morning walk. They did not have to look at a particular screen. This is a background medium. This is supposed to be with you as a companion. But when this converted into a video podcast, the entire fraternity has shifted. We as audio producers are right now in doldrums. I'll be honest with you. A lot of my friends, people who have started, I've got my senior sitting right over here. I've looked up to Rajiv Bhai for a very, very long time. What Automatic has been doing, what IVM has been doing, what Doshi has done, what Tahil Saab has done, is set up the base for us. But right now we are all in this situation कि यार हम टेलीकास्ट बना रहे हैं, एक टॉक शो बना रहे हैं, एक वीडियो शो बना रहे हैं, या हम एक जो ऑडियो शो बनाया करते थे अनवर पाल एंड कुणाल के साथ के इनके शोज, I was the oldest listener of it, and I was the oldest listener to sit around and listen to these two guys have fun. Now, of course, they have reels, they have videos out there. It's also great, but the magic of listening cannot be compared to the magic of viewing. You know.
So, Tra, can I?
Please.
I think that as you all probably know, Mantra is more fiery than I can ever hope to be, and also is very convincing. But I think that the only place where I would probably ask for you to pause a bit is that I think that the key strength of audio and the key strength of podcasts is that many of the content formats that we never thought imaginable. Both of us come from an FM background. We would also sit on panels and complain about license fees and music rights and all of those for many years. But we were at core content people, and the major frustration that we had was that people would say that how come we don't have anything like NPR in India? How come we don't have anything like BBC in India? And what podcast really does is that it allows you to have the NPR kind of programming, the BBC kind of programming. So between us, we have done true crime, we have done learning, we have done fiction, obviously, we have done like management ki Pathshala, a show on Indian family businesses, a show on how the Gita can be applied to modern, dilemmas and treated as self-help. So there's like a why. If you just go to Spotify, Audible and look for podcasts, you will find that there are more than 30, 40 different categories and hundreds of shows where very, very, very high quality content has been created. And yes, I think that there is a temporary hiccup. I would like to think of it as temporary because I think that newer markets tend to latch on to whatever's easier, whatever's more convenient. And in some ways, video, the omnipresence of YouTube, etc., is more convenient. But I think that if you look at it on the long run, and which is why I would request Mantra to be patient. I think the key strengths that the audio medium has, that the podcast medium has, I don't think two people sitting on a couch and talking exploits that even to 1%, to the extent of 1%. And therefore, I think that this is a sort of a minor diversion in the journey, and we continue to be very, very, very gung-ho about why the core strength of podcasting and the core strength of being able to bring this plurality of content will result in its long-term success.
So I guess the point about video being valid and true, just staying with the kind of, you mentioned different genres of podcasts, right? So from self-help, finance, knowledge and learning, business leadership, and then there is fiction, true crime, dramatized, true fiction, etc. For a maker of a podcast, what is the genre works well amongst audiences? What is your take on it?
Uh, See, I think that at some level, I know this is not a satisfying answer, but all genres work. Like
True that.
Mantra has made some of the best fiction shows in India. I would like to think we have made some of the best non-fiction shows in India. Okay.
Right.
True that.
But I think so from that point of view, it just depends on what hypothesis you're working with. I think there is one hypothesis that says that India is a very entertainment driven market, and therefore if you want audio to succeed, you create a OTT kind of an experience without the video. And I think some of the great shows have done that and done it successfully. In some cases, I think I've done it even better than some OTT shows. Okay, Bhaskar Bose being one such example. On the non-fiction side, the hypothesis is that again, young people in this country are very, very hungry for learning, for education, almost anything. How I can learn to speak better, how I can, like one of the most successful shows that we did was called Management Ki Pachala, which is basically giving it converted an MBA, actually converted an MBA curriculum into a serialized audio series. So there is a great, like, people literally lap this up. So almost anything. But if you really look at, so if you come back to the point that I made earlier, which is that what is the core strength of audio, and therefore what is the long tail of audio? I would say that anything that is in the area of learning, education, self-improvement, personal growth, those kind of genres tend to track very well.
So essentially, if you're a subject matter expert on a particular, whatever your strength is, you could then create that podcast, and that would be most authentic.
Yeah, totally. Totally. And self-help, as Khalsa said, is right on top. People want to be told how to live their life, how to live a better life. And that section has definitely done well. Mythology, for some reason, why works tremendously well. Almost the top 5 of any top 10 podcasts would be the Gita Sar.
Because in India, mythology is self-help.
For the young and restless. Yeah, all of them.
Jumping in, the way, I mean, as a podcast producer, instead, as much as a creator, where we have many creators who we associate with and work with, we have a slightly different approach to answer your question, right?
Sure.
Our approach is a lot more driven by what we believe is, for lack of a better word, trending or predicted to do well this quarter, this year.
How do you arrive at that prediction?
Conversations, some analytics, and a little bit of hope and prayer. But
Is there enough? Is there enough?
This is a very interesting example. Around 6 months back, and this is not going to be very funny, but we made money on this, so you'll be with me. We made a series of podcasts on IAS and JEE entrance exam question. It is the most boring. I mean, it's the worst content we made in terms of sheer quality of content, if you know what I mean, right? We literally took UPSC books and JEE books and converted it. It got
absolutely.
Now, don't get me wrong, right? I mean, of course, my creators in my company are all obviously up in arms and are like, "Hum kya kar rahe hain life mein," and all that. But on the other hand, it seems to be doing well. So what I want to sort of emphasize here is that if you're a creator with a genre sort of or a slant or a talent of a particular genre, I think you have to do what you have to do, right? Nobody can tell you what to do.
Got it.
But
So you
if
just do what you do.
if you happen to be one step above that, or can do that, or have the ability to do that, you also want to associate with other creators who you can work with and say, look, for this year, I want to do self-help, but next year I predict the Ram Mandir being inaugurated, and then I will do 3 religious shows.
Yep.
Why is that the wrong way to think, right? I mean, you could actually
True
do
that.
that. If I have a series of podcasts scheduled for December when there are certain cricket shows, why not? It's a little bit of that. So I'm just trying to differentiate between creative and commercial, and I think they can be married without really compromising beyond a point, right?
I think there is one other factor, and this doesn't necessarily work well for people who are trying to build larger organizations like Mantra and I, but because this is an individual creator-driven medium at some level,
Right.
and the barrier of entry is very low,
Right.
you could pick a topic that you're interested in. So there's a fabulous show called the Desi Crime Podcast,
Right.
which is basically one person reading crime stories. You can wake up one morning, decide you want to do that, or you could be talking about women's empowerment, or
Yeah.
challenges of
I
people.
think that's different from what Anurag is saying. What you're saying is that there's this individual or this girl who's really interested in the e4m and she talks about it.
No,
Whereas he,
what I'm saying is, you're asking, if I understand correctly, that how do you decide which are the popular genres? I am saying that you may not even know a genre existed.
until you're
So, I think the problem with looking backwards is that you tend to do the same things again and again.
Sure.
Whereas going headlong into a new thing, you have the opportunity to find something that you've not done before.
Sure, that's the
And I think
creative.
that's where the low entry barrier. During the lockdown, you'll be familiar, podcast mics were not available on Amazon. They had sold out.
That's right.
Because literally everybody was doing a podcast.
Right.
And even the consumption went through the roof.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the maximum episodes of Bhaskar were heard during those days because naturally people were spending so much time and the screen fatigue had
The
happened.
point is that new genres that you just did not know existed, because in FM, in television, we are used to very structured ways of looking at genre.
Right.
And you have connoisseurs of every form of art. There is a friend of mine, Abhishek Saha, he's an actor, which is why you would know him. He speaks about books, bread, and coffee beans with such passion. And he knows so much that this is a very niche subject to talk about, but he can speak about coffee and coffee connoisseurs for hours and hours. So he actually is developing a podcast with us saying boots, bread, and beans or something like that. Now imagine you have podcasts who talk about bikers, motorcyclists who talk about their engines, such specific genres, people who talk about art, people who talk about food. So it's a great space for almost anyone and everyone.
Entry barrier being low to create something like that. So just music or sound design being so critical to everything in the audio medium, right? I just want to move this conversation to Gaurav. And can you talk about, that and how important that is and
Sure.
can
By
you
the way, I was really happy hearing all of you speak because you all are the podcast gurus over here. But I think we see ourselves as an enabler as Hooper, because music and sound design sort of plays a role in every kind of content that you create, right? And I would say at one level, it's about customer retention and engagement, more so in the audio medium, because visual medium, you also are seeing something, but in audio, every single touch point that you want to activate in terms of highlighting the mood. So music plays a big role over there. And so does sound effects. But the other area which we sort of keep telling our clients is the safety element of the content that you create, which is where we see our company as literally like an insurance company, right? Like every track on Hooper, we've got about 12,500 tracks, which are all copyrights. And today, as Mantra said, at one level, creators are syndicating and repurposing their content, right? So you create a content piece originally thinking, let's say I'm going to put it on Spotify, but let's say a couple of months later, you sort of repurpose it into 30 seconders, you put it up on Snap, you put it up on YouTube and so on. And that's where music rights really come into play. So having copyright safe music is really important for your content. In podcasts also, a lot of the content that's created is brand funded. So now it's looked upon as branded content. And again, if you've been following trends on YouTube, Insta, Snap, any music track that's used in branded content is taken extremely seriously by the rights holders, right? So we've seen, especially in the audio medium. So जब हमने launch किया था, we actually thought we'll only go after the video medium, okay? And we killed it over there. Like whether it's Myntra, Marico, ZTV, 2 lakh content creators who use Hooper music in their videos, we're doing that. In the audio section, initially everybody said no. We went and met the podcast companies, we went and met audiobooks companies. यार ले ही नहीं रहे हैं लोग subscription. We were wondering क्यों नहीं ले रहे हैं. And they used to say नहीं यार 2 लोग बैठ के बस बात कर रहे हैं, मुझे music नहीं चाहिए, या I am just using some stock music from somewhere. After a while, they all started coming and saying, "Niyar, I have faced copyright issues." And boom, Pocket FM today is the largest user in terms of volume at Hooper. Podcast is a client. We've got dozens of podcasters, audiobooks creators, and as you rightly said, crazy subjects. Like, let's say we've got 12 in Bengal, there are these audiobooks creators who just make horror content, right? And they need music. There's pet care, there's health and fitness, travel, lifestyle. So I would say that music is playing a very important role. The awareness of using copyright safe music is increasing. The last part is the sound effects part of it. I think it's a mixed bag. There are a lot of people who love using sound effects. I think it enhances the emotion. I've also seen the flip side where a lot of people believe that nahi yaar, my content is sacrosanct. I don't want that ting tung sound, you know. So I've seen both the sides. But the fact is that if you're going to repurpose your content, like let's say you've done a 30-minute chat, or let's say we've chatted for 20 minutes, and you're going to cut, you know, four exciting 30-second gems. One could be motivational, one could be comedy, one could be an emotional story. You will require music and sound in it. And I think that's the role we play. And the importance is just sort of increasing by the day in that space.
And there's a great marriage between what we do, what we at Eminem do, and what Uber does. And because we create audio fiction, and audio fiction is nothing but the music and the sound effects. And we also follow banks, and I should be definitely looping on Uber right away. In fact, my I said, how come we've not gone for this one? Because our life is music. Our life is the background music and the sound effect. And we create, it's a blind man's television. We create pictures and empty canvas, and that happens through the writers, the actors performing those scenes, and the music and the sound effect that's right behind it.
Talking about actors, right? Because I mean, I'm glad you're doing some of that. We also are actually starting to use sound effects. This could perhaps, I actually believe it is slightly newer. So, you know, some of our fiction shows which we're doing now have immersive sound.
Yeah.
And I'm actually finding it quite difficult to figure out how to do that. Technologically, it's also direction wise, right?
No, absolutely.
So if a car is going up the hill, does the audio sound move to the left to the right?
So the panic
go your head and go to the left. And therefore, if you're going round and round a hill, does the sound reflect it? You will see videos on, or, you know, audio stuff on YouTube.
Yeah. So that's the binaural sound design. It is a three-dimensional sound design. We at Eminem, we invested on binaural microphones to record our own folly, our own sound effects. So the products that we made for Audible, for Spotify, for Cuckoo, all of the design that we use is especially sound effects. So if you hear that door knock, in the story, you'll flip over it. The moment you're wearing those headphones, you're sitting, you're listening, and there's a character that has entered in the scene, and there's been a door knock. I guarantee you will get up and open your own door because the sound effect is so powerfully recorded. You feel as if there's somebody outside your door. So that's the power of Foley. That's the power of sound effects, and how you can enhance music is exactly the way.
I think it will become almost the norm very soon. It is not the norm yet. It is a specialized high-end.
I've been following that for the longest period of time.
Sure, because a lot of creators, they tell us that they often don't know how to use music and audio to the fullest.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of education is still needed where we use these, and I think that is an area which, you know,
because audio fiction will remain the story. Right at the beginning, we spoke about podcast. नहीं वो podcast है जो video पे हो रहा है. Let's not call it a podcast. I'm guilty to it also. I run a channel called Spotlight, home to the Quirkies podcast, but that's a peer pressure that we had to go through because video podcast आया था. नहीं तो I specialize in audio dramas and stuff. अगर मैं audio dramas को video में बनाऊंगा तो मैं film maker नहीं बनूंगा. I create audio fiction. उसका power audio के अंदर है. वो भास्कर बोस को किसी ने देखा नहीं है अभी तक के लोगों के जहन में. What Jeetu Raj said a few minutes back, what Rajesh was saying a few minutes back, it is the theater of mind, and that's where audio fiction excels. Big kudos to Pocket FM is doing at this point of time. In the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing a lot about them. The conversation should actually move towards the next stage, Nikhil, which is about use of AI in audio books and audio fiction and everywhere else. Pocket FM is in fact letting the listeners be a part of it also. It generate user generated content banana start kar diya. Are you a storyteller? Give us your story. Are you a voiceover artist? Give us your voiceovers. What Audible is doing, non-music audio digital entities is what we work in. I think Spotify, for the longest period of time, ran a wonderful campaign with their audio fiction, with Bhaskar Bose, with I Hear Yous, with Shania's, and what not did they create. Their internal policies might have shifted, but where they are losing out, Pocket is winning.
So, okay. So there is commissioned content by Spotify, Audible, and the other larger platforms. And then there is the podcast that you might make on your own.
Sure.
Now, of course, when it's commissioned, you make it and you can almost assure that it's profitable. How do you ensure commercial viability, Anurag, on something that you might make, but you funded it yourself? Of course, however low your cost barrier and your entry barrier might be, what is the way a podcast maker can go about trying to deliver some ROI on his investment?
हाथ रखिए आपने, please sir, I'd like.
बहुत मुश्किल सवाल है.
It's too short to answer this question. Let's do this in another section.
We have actually done, wherever we made our own content, we've tried to bank on, I'm sorry to say, the video model, because you can still monetize through the YouTube, CPMs, etc. Essentially, if you're making your own content, you need to have it, the IP is yours. So therefore, theoretically, you could stream it in as many places as you wish, in whatever formats as you wish, right? And therefore, it makes sense for you to therefore put it on multiple platforms and hope that those platforms will pay you something. Now, that something right now is abysmally low. And therefore, unfortunately, they don't add up enough to a number, which in my opinion, really incentivizes the decent or a good quality content, doesn't incentivize good quality content creation. It incentivizes an individual content creator who's sitting all alone from putting one out. But if you have to hire a small team and use good sound design, it's a struggle. The cost goes up beyond what you will monetize. We've been, I would say, 25 to 30% of our content has found brand sponsorships. We haven't been, however, able to get media brand sponsorships, I'm sorry to say, because of measurements, you just don't know how many streams, and therefore you cannot sell on the CPMs or XYZ or the number of,
I can try and give you a more heartfelt answer to that question. I see, I personally don't like leaving my studio, okay? The reason I'm here is that I'm hoping the advertising industry will step forward and support some of these non-commercial.
It's absolutely hard conversation.
Yeah, that's why we are here.
But we've been on the brands. So basically, CSR and brand budget ko humne bahut
No, so yeah, so some
media budget, if I may put it that way,
even for individuals, what you're saying, भाई कह रहे थे कि what video के जरिए आप जो income कमा रहे हैं through YouTube or wherever else, the same format needs to apply in audio also. If numbers no भाई, आप एक सिंगर ने एक गाना रिलीज किया 3 मिनट का, उसको 1 लाख लोगों ने सुना, 1 लाख का नंबर आया. आपने एक पॉडकास्ट निकाला 40 मिनट का, उसको 50,000 लोगों ने सुना, हाफ द अमाउंट ऑफ नंबर्स. लेकिन 40 मिनट का ऑडियो कंपेयर दैट टू 2 मिनट का ऑडियो, मेरे 40 मिनट के ऑडियो के अगर 2 लिसनर है और आपके एक गाने के 10 लिसनर है, तो मेरा लिसनर, मेरे 2 लिसनर्स आपसे ज्यादा एंगेजमेंट. My series Mr. X, which is a 700 series.
क्या किया है कि we've been like I will, but it's an interesting example, especially if somebody wants to know. हम लोग क्या किए, we found a lot of ideas. So recently we packaged 6 podcasts which just happened to have, for example, in this particular case, women-centric themes, where women entrepreneurs, there were some stories, just so happened to be women-centric, and it was just that a particular brand was very, very keen, and they decided to sort of sponsor all 6 of them. If you ask me, they paid us around 10 times the money for making that podcast, and therefore theoretically I've made many other podcasts with the money they paid me. That, but I didn't have to put to the kitni streams hui, itna views aaya, because wahan pe alag. But अगर streams करनी पड़ती तो आपका problem हो जाता.
You worked on perception, what the brand stood for, and you created content that resonated with the brand.
And the brand asked for it. But I think that is the second way where we, and it was a reasonable.
Totally. And that's the only reason why in the coming days, you will definitely have better chances for podcasters. I can't disclose the entities who are working towards it, but there is definitely space for listens. जिस views के लिए पूरी दुनिया पागल हुए जा रही है, उसी listens के बलबूते पे similar format will be applied into the audio fraternity. All I say is, like my brethren of the audio community, lend me your ears. This is the medium. Believe in your medium. Believe in audio. You don't need to piggyback on video productions just to run your audio content. Don't make it into a space where कि सर मेरे पास एक रेडियो कैंपेन, उसके साथ में आपको 10,000 वीडियोस दे रहा हूँ, साथ में ये रेडियो कैंपेन ले लो. No, use your.
Just on that note, I have just 2 points. One is that you have, especially a lot of people on the panel have had celebrities, actors, Amitabh Bachchan. Now you're doing Wastelanders with Marvel, Seth Karina, and a whole, what is when the platform is commissioning this, and Richa Chadda, Ali Fazal, there's so much, there has been some
Yeah, that's why 2062.
Right. So very prominent film stars who've done a good job. Now, the thing is that does that work versus non-celebrity? When you talk about, does it add up the numbers? Why don't we see a season 2, for example? So the reading is that, has it not worked? So that's
So
one.
see, the thing is that has it worked? A complicated question to answer, because the platform has different objectives when they make these demands. Okay. Left to us, would we rather bring native talent on the show rather than a film star who's already doing 30 other things? I think both of us will agree we would rather bring native talent.
And native talent has worked for us.
Better, much better, far superior. There's no question about it.
Makes it different because Marvel has a series coming.
But if the platform says that they want to put up a billboard with Mr. Bachchan's face on it, we have no argument against that.
Probably a brand campaign more than a personal campaign, right?
See, what we want is that for the medium should be able to operate without needing some crutches,
Right.
And we think it can.
So, great. And just the last question I have is that in an extremely cluttered environment with so many platforms and so many shows and the entry barrier being so low, if I've made a podcast, I often get told now you have to put more money to promote it, because not only do you need to create it, you need to now promote it, and that costs a lot more, like any P&A on a movie. So any thoughts on that?
I mean, everybody's doing the same. You make a film, you'll have to do the same. You write a book, you'll have to do the same. And social media is a blessing in a disguise, actually. And people are doing that very, very comfortably.
Even when the Star Plus shows had like 20 plus
rating,
if you drove from South Bombay to Bandra, all the billboards would be either Star or Z or Sony.
Yeah.
So the idea
is you have to pay for shelf space as well, because you need to scroll and
podcast.
I mean, the P&A has to be in your personal P&L, in my opinion.
Yeah, promotions for the same will do. Celebrities will make a difference. I mean, Ali Fazal and Richard Virus 2062 season 2 also came by for the Marvel's Wastelander series. Mr. Vijay sitting away here. He played Rocket the Raccoon from the Guardians of the Galaxy alongside Mrs. F. It's a 6-part series, been running for 1.5 years. We did DC Comics, Batman. So international collaborations, they are coming in. You know that audio fiction, audio books, these two sectors within the non-music digital audio platform will stay. Podcasts, I'm still believing that the shift from pod to VOD is going to create a little bit of shackles. But as far as audio fiction is concerned, I see the success of Pocket. I see what Cuckoo is doing. I see what Audible is doing in audio fiction in the future.
Okay, before they send me another Time's Up note. So thank you all. Thanks for this really enriching session. I hope you guys have enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for all our panelists on the stage. And may I take the opportunity of inviting Jahan Mandriwala, the head of creative content channels of Pfizer, to please join us and help us in the felicitation. We will request, starting with, of course, Mantrimok, if we can have both of you in one frame. A small token of appreciation from team side. Jahan, if you can just step towards the left. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause. Rajesh, thank you so much for joining us today. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, let the applause continue. Anurag Srivastava. Anurag, thank you so much for joining us today. Gaurav Bagankar, thank you, Gaurav. Let's give Gaurav one more round of applause. And of course, the one who created and curated this entire conversation, Nikhil Machandani. Let's give him a warm round of applause. And we just request all our panelists to please come together for one group photograph. Of course, please, all our panelists. Well, it's all happening at hashtag Golden Mics. We hope you're having a great time. Let's once again give a round of applause to all our leaders who are present here and have contributed to an immense round of discussion and knowledge. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So with that, it is now time to move on to another engaging panel discussion. Let's talk about the power of sound, leveraging audio to build and strengthen brands. Well, this session will explore how businesses can harness the emotive and immersive quality of sound to forge deeper connections with consumers. The experts will discuss the strategies for creating impactful audio identities, utilizing podcasts and voice technology, and leveraging music and sound design to enhance brand recognition. Let's explore the transformative potential of audio in shaping brand narratives and fostering the brand loyalty in today's competitive market landscape. Well, with that being said, and the stage now being ready, it's time for me to call upon our eminent panelists. Starting with Atul Razdan, Chief Marketing Officer of Big FM. Atul, starting from the left, yes, we've put the creative just for your reference. Thank you, Atul. If I could now have Mona Lisa Mandal, VP Marketing and Digital Fever Network. Thank you so much for joining us. Sujay Raj, Chief Marketing Officer of Novara Group. If I could now call upon Shannon Kumar, Joint President Marketing Head Brand Design, Brand and Communication Strategy, Ultratech Cement. Alhad Radikar, Category Head Personal Mobility, Gulf Oil Lubricants, India. Come on, ladies and gentlemen, the applause need to continue. Bhavin Bifpilia, Head Marketing India and Sri Lanka Triumph Group. Jahan Anuwala, the Head of Creative Content Channels, Pfizer. Welcome, Jahan. And curating this conversation is Sonam Seni, Assistant Editor, Exchange for Media Group. Let's give our girl a warm round of applause. Welcome her on the stage. So, well, Sonam, we've got such incredible leadership on the stage, and I'll leave it in your able hands to take it forward.
Thank you, Bhavna. And since it's the last session of today's conference and we stand between you and your well-deserved awards, the aim is to deliver an insightful session. So the topic of today's discussion is the power of sound, leveraging audio to build and strengthen brands. In today's world of branding, advances in audio technology have changed how we connect with listeners. From old school radio to interactive podcast and streaming services, sound goes beyond just hearing. It leaves lasting impression, builds loyalty, and affects how people choose and decide. So I'll start with Atul and Mona. And I want to start with, in the world of convergence of media, how does radio, which is among the oldest media, is holding its own place? If we can start.
Okay, thank you very much. Since morning, I've learned that radio is not an old medium. So FM broadcasting in India is just about 24 years old. So as compared to TV, print, etc., we're not old. Having said that, really there are two perspectives to look at. One from a radio broadcaster perspective and the other from radio as a medium perspective. From a radio broadcaster perspective, the answer lies in the itself. The convergence of media is the answer. How does a radio broadcaster expand itself to cater to newer mediums, depending on its core skills? So if it is an influencer management program, can we use our RJs? If it is podcasts, it's like second nature to us. So how does a radio broadcaster expand its own horizons? That's the way in which all the radio broadcasters, I guess, are trying to get into. From a radio as a medium itself, it's about being true to the medium. Is the brand objective something that radio as a medium can do? or is it something that it's better for other mediums to take on? So you have to be a little choosy in those perspectives. Are we creating content which is for awareness and hence frequency? Is it for engagement and hence storytelling led? So that is something that the radio industry has also to understand. Music, for example. Are we playing music like streaming channels, which is algorithmic playlists, or are we keeping an element of surprise for which radio is known? So based on these two things, I think from a broadcaster perspective, how to expand, and from radio as a medium, using in its purest sense. These are two things that help broadcasters to keep today relevant in today's world.
Mona, would you like to add something?
I'll just quickly add. We've had enough, conversations around this topic also since morning. A lot of dignitaries, speakers have already spoken about it. Actually, if you see, there is no battle between the other media vehicles that are there and radio. Everything has to beautifully coexist, and therefore the fact that we are continuously talking about that radio has over a period of time evolved, evolution has definitely happened in radio. And in today's day and age, we cannot say that radio is just radio. It has become so much more plus. Radio has become not only for audio entertainment, it has also become social media, it has also become live entertainment, it has also got into podcasting, it has got a wealth of rich creators as the foundation stone of this industry, that we can branch out into anywhere possible where where there is a story to be told. Just 2 sessions before, there was a conversation that was happening between Abe and Ramesh very clearly spoke about it, and mentioned that we've become content creators. Doesn't matter, we are platform agnostic, so the convergence is definitely going to happen, and it is happening. Multimedia, multi-platform, wherever the brand is asking us to tell a story, we are ready. We have our hands and legs ready. We can tell a story in any medium you want us to perform.
Thank you, Mona. And I think you rightly said radio has become like it's radio plus. So like
I just have a couple of points. Sorry, I mean, just a couple of points to add to what Mona just mentioned. And I think 2 or 3 points which are essentially that has happened over a period of journey that we see radio, how it has evolved from AM, FM to now what podcast or video cast is what is the word that Mantra used, right? So essentially there are 3 things to my mind that has happened. One, of course, is how radio has able to integrate itself into digital ecosystems. So of late, all of us know that any of the radio channel that you look at today, the leading radio channels, everything is available either on their web pages. So the live stream is what is available. So accessibility has suddenly gone up. So obviously that is one big thing, big change that radio guys have been able to adapt to. Second is what you spoke, and I just thought it's good to add from a brand side or from the client side, essentially how we speak about, right? So I typically, as brand, we also look at what is the plus thing that also comes through with radio. So it is not only one as a listening medium that, so it's not only to do with the jingle that I've created or the advertise that I've created, but it's also how radio has been able to evolve itself into radio plus. So today radio is radio plus social media, radio plus your content pieces, radio plus video podcast that you've been able to curate through. So yeah, it's a interesting journey that way. Definitely it's evolution that radio as a medium has been able to conduct itself through. So I think it's a great journey. I would certainly add to that.
Thank you so much. That's a great thumbs up from the other side of the table.
Sujay, would you like to add, like from a marketing perspective, how good of a marketing tool radio can be?
I'm a slightly controversial contender out here. So Well, and I'm currently speaking from what I currently, managing the mandate for, right? It's not that I haven't used radio in the past. Of course, I have used radio a lot. In fact, in my earlier stints, radio was a very, very important medium for us because we were talking to a certain set of a certain cohort of audience that was extremely, readily available on that platform. In fact, to the extent, and I would want to take it to radio, in fact, audio itself, for example, in my earlier stint, we've created a platform for Media Dark geographies, but Media Dark is not anymore a question now because of the proliferation of internet. But for Media Dark geographies, we heavily dependent ourselves on audio format, where, we created a platform for users to get onto and then, listen to audio content because that was the only way to reach out to them. Even radios channels and platforms were not available there, and they could just dial a number and listen to some very interesting audio content, and therein we could actually place our brand, right? So audio as a medium has been fantastic, and I think it still continues to be in its its avatar, whether it's podcast or whether it is any other influencer led activity that leads to audio. But in, like, for example, my current mandate where I am speaking to slightly, I think, top of the pyramid kind of an audience, right? Which is where I think the value of radio as a medium has probably diminished because of the digital proliferation that has happened, and their default destination to get to any content, right? And the default destination to get to any content is largely video, or for that matter, the internet. Now, that could be anything. It could be social media, it could be streaming sites, it could be, streaming platforms like music and stuff like that. And that is where I have had, my partners coming and not really pitching the platform of radio to me as much as they would for another brand altogether. So that's the scenario that I live in currently. Nothing against the platform, nothing against the medium. I think the medium has evolved fantastically well. But whether it is right now available for my audience is a bit of a question right now that I am dabbling with. Right. So that's, I think, the way that we look at it from our marketing spends on radio.
Okay. Chandan?
So I think radio, I have fond memories, so radio, I think, has rediscovered itself in different ways and means we have seen innovation happening. And today, audio for that matter spans into radio, into podcast, into digital audio as well, right? I think there are 3 points that come to my mind as to what is driving relevance and what will continue to drive relevance for audio media, So at a personal level, obviously, when I'm driving to and from work, and when my eyes are completely glued onto the road and the vehicle in front of me, audio and radio is all that I want to, keep myself engaged with life every day, right? Second, I would say that, it's a flexible media, it allows you to, do both top of the funnel and bottom of the funnel activities, marketing activities. You can run an awareness campaign. You can also do a conversion campaign, very effective in that sense. Scale, obviously, I'm not comparing scale at this point in time, right? Third piece, I think, which is going to continue driving relevance for radio is that, the core of radio is music and storytelling, okay? And both are inherently positive and uplifting in that sense for the audience, right? And when the audience is in a positive state of mind, he is generally more receptive to an advertisement, right? So it's a media which kind of has your audience, with ready to harvest attention in meaningful ways, right? It's up to the marketing guy or the brands to understand what is the brand task that they have that radio can help them achieve. Yeah.
Yeah. So, so when we look at, so firstly, let us understand that how do we comprehend a message? So from a brand team, we typically look at advertising is nothing but a consumer messaging that I'm trying to do. So, I mean, this is my personal opinion, of course, is as long as listening or hearing is an integral part of message comprehension, any form of audio medium will stand true. Okay, so because unless you have a comprehension of that particular message, so where you are seeing, you are listening, both happening together, that of course gives us the best scope of comprehending the message that the brand wants to talk to you or through to the audience. So from that context, radio, of course, makes a lot of sense, or any of the audio medium makes a lot of sense. If I have to look at how we would evaluate this as a medium, firstly, let's articulate that it's a medium that I want to evaluate in terms of, is it a great marketing tool that I want to use for the campaign that we are in, we are kind of looking at actioning. So there are 4-5 things which typically we would look at our end as to whether it is delivering on those parameters. So you end up looking at what is the reach, what is the capability to build frequency on that particular medium. Is there a cost angle which is substantially different or is comparatively in that context? Are you looking at a medium which allows you to do some kind of a innovation, essentially? So is there a possibility of this medium offering me a scope to innovate, scope to engage further with the TG that we are talking to? And lastly, and more importantly, off late, is what is the possibility of a localization or linguistic issues that I can address with. So when I look at these 4-5 parameters and we start evaluating mediums, radio would score there to my mind. I think what you mentioned, of course, that's the evaluation as a brand that we end up doing, that whether this particular medium suits or helps me score higher on all these 4-5 parameters. So when you look at radio as a medium, reach, my mind is not a questionable affair. Of course, it is one of the most reached medium per se. Radio has been that way. In fact, All India Radio, if I'm not wrong, talks about 99% of a coverage, which is what. So reach is not a question when it comes to radio as a medium. In terms of building frequencies, what I have typically observed, and this is again stemming more from how I consume radio, little more personal biases, but we typically end up liking a radio channel or liking a radio show. So if I am able to understand that, okay, this is how my audience has been engaged with, and if I can curate and build content around those pieces, which is either a show or that radio channel. So for example, there is a radio channel which speaks essentially the oldies, so it usually speak about old songs. So I mean, is that the audience cohort that I'm looking at? So then I get that understanding with the consumer, and then I can build frequencies. What Mona mentioned very interestingly is radio is today not only radio, it is radio plus. So there is a plethora of engagement, plethora of innovation that exists today as far as radio as a medium is concerned. So I would evaluate these 4-5 parameters and then kind of come to conclusion that, okay, this is my objective, and these are the 4-5 parameters on which radio as a medium scores, or it doesn't score for that matter. And then I will look at it as a tool. Yeah.
So when you talk about strategically, first you define whether you want to go tactical or you want to build saliency for the brand. It works both ways. Radio, if you want to build tactically, you'll always want to go for reach. But at the same time, if you want to build saliency for a brand, you will start building more conversations on radio. That's where people want to be more engaged. People want to interact with your brand. And I think radio is one of the oldest medium that was the most interactive. I remember in 2010, when you have a print ad, a consumer could not talk to the print ad or give a feedback, or a television ad. But radio is something that listens to their listeners as well. It's two-way interaction. And that is where having this medium as a two-way, either you want to go for a reach, it's simple. You take 5 radio channels, 4 radio channels, bombard them with FCTs, and you get additional plus as well. Or if you want to create a property or an IP, build a brand, conversations around it, that's where most engaging is what I feel radio's become. In fact, radio seems to be a little more progressive in today's time. It's been pretty progressive since a long time. The first ever influencers were the radio jockeys, right? I mean, people really wanted to meet them. I started off my career in radio. I know so many calls, and people used to literally wait outside to meet either uh, some of the other RJs while they were the first influencers. Today, we've got a plethora of influencers, but let's not forget, radio is plus plus for a reason that all these progressive points have also evolved from radio as well. So, yeah, that's my take on how radio as a medium for brand.
So I would say that radio in isolation is not something which we would look as a marketer. There needs to be some element of, omni-channel strategy and having cross interaction between the channels, be it like integration of radio with digital or any offline activity for that matter, has its own benefits. Like we have seen in some specific audience set from our pharma standpoint, they have reacted to radio in a very nicer way where they have seen that the primary first-hand information is being transmitted by radio as a channel. Whereas for the other younger set of audience, that wasn't the case. So I would say that, because it was an integrated approach, we had something offline. Whatever people heard on radio, they later came and inquired about it in the offline channel. So that integration helped us. And that's the reason I would say that radio has an element to surprise. It did surprise me. And yeah.
Actually, I would just add to that point. There is, in fact, a Nielsen study which says that if you use radio in integration with your other marketing tools, media vehicles, the efficacy of your conversion increases by 1%. So these, so of course, when you are doing radio in silo, it might, depending on what is your brand objective, what is your business objective, it will do that much. But if you're integrating a larger media plan, there are chances that it would amplify the larger objective, which is the conversion at the end of it. So it works both ways, like you said. It works top of the funnel as well.
I have radio just as an isolation as well.
So, like I said, radio has become plus plus plus. So in radio also there is so much more variety to
with other channels.
Explore.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I love radio, so I cannot leave the question hanging, which Sujay said. If you want me to quote RAM, which is like a trusted measurement tool, 20 to 25% audience in our morning shows is SECA. If you add SECB to it, it's about 40%, which is a sizable number if you look at. If you even cut it further, look at SEC A1, that's about 10 to 12%, which is again a very huge amount of numbers that you will get. So it is about choosing the right program, right channel, as he was saying, and then looking for a solution that will appeal to your audience. So it's about building that community to RJ on a channel. Before you do that, I'll just tell you one more thing. In fact, let's break down radio. What does radio really mean? For me, it's about the 5 words or 5 alphabets, RADIO. And I love acronyms, so I'm going to just indulge me for a minute. What is not to love about radio? It's the question that you asked, how is it a marketing tool? Does it feature in your mix or not? R is for reach. Nobody can beat the reach that radio provides, and 99% according to All India Radio, and about 80% in metros for the private broadcasters. And it's hyperlocal. Go to any village. Big FM alone covers about 19,000 villages across the country. Then A is for adapt. The adapt is how does radio adapt to various geographies and various communities, or TG. We speak to people in their language. We showcase them their own songs. We choose topics that are relevant to them. And it's not like one channel presenting the same content across the country. It's about each station of our network talking to that person in that geography. B is for depth. Depth is about 100 or so RJs talking about your brand continuously for 30 days, 3 times a day. And that's the kind of depth you will get on the content, because every time the radio jockey cannot go and say about the same, talk about the same thing. Expert, he will bring a box prop, he will bring a celebrity, and that's how you get depth on the content. I use your influence, and thank you very much. Radio jockeys are the OG influencers. Rajesh, for you. I think it's about creating a balance, bringing them from behind the mic to in front of the camera. If we are able to do that, then we are the best influencers in the country. O is basically, and that was a difficult one. So it's for organized and at the same time a bit compartmentalized. When I say that, I mean there is a content for everybody on the same channel, whether it is devotional in the morning, whether it is some content for the office folk in the morning and drive time shows, whether it is the housewife, which is the 12 to 3 slot predominantly on radio, the youth of the country, that's the early evening slot, to Rahul Makin's show, which is the night slot, a completely different audience. So it is organized, but it is at the same time compartmentalized. So I don't really see what is not there to love on radio. That's the bit I want to talk to you about. It's about selecting the right show, selecting the right channel, and creating a community for your TG on it.
No, I completely buy your point. I have no doubt about that. But here is the situation, right? This is the scenario. We are, like I said, the top of the pyramid. We are trying to talk to the UHNI audience. Now, when I kind of roll out a brief to a media company and I tell them, hey, here, partner, this is my objective. This is what I need to do. This is what, is my campaign. This is what is my, overall objective to achieve. I, by default, didn't get the medium as a part of the plan. Now, on asking, okay, what happened to this medium? It was an interesting, important medium for a very long time. And the partner himself is actually of the opinion that maybe you should be on streaming apps. Now, even the measurement out there is even more difficult, right? I don't know how can I measure my content? How can I measure the effectiveness of what I'm going to put my monies on a streaming app? But there is a certain amount of, what do I say? For this audience that I'm kind of wanting to reach out to, saying, okay, maybe that's not your priority medium right now.
And that's where the plus comes in.
Sorry to interrupt, because we are short on time. I would like to, because he spoke about the measurement. So I would, like to ask you, how would you, evaluate the effectiveness of radio campaigns? And
you should ask this to him or someone else, because I use that medium less, actually, more than I do.
I can answer to that.
Yeah.
This is one question that ponders upon to us as a marketeers, and we always have debates with the brand teams where please go beyond reach. Please don't come to me and talk about just having 4 million, 5 million reach or whatever the number is, because that's not going to be success in today's era. The yardstick to measure effectiveness of radio should be, at least in our world, the pharma world, we say that has the conversations between doctors and patients increased in the clinic? So if that has happened, I can even attribute that success through radio. There can be something where patients are looking for a particular, topic or a disease therapy. That can be attributed to success. The number of people talking or discussing about it, that can be a measurement or a yardstick to measure the effectiveness. So having just a reach and impressions in today's world is not going to work. And I feel that radio has a lot of room to improve in these aspects, where we can at least attribute that success. If we have to spend on radio, it needs to be beyond these reach and impressions. So that's what.
Chandran, Bhavin, anyone?
So I think while we all discuss about how effective is the media, I think as a marketer, the first thing that I ask myself is how effective is my piece of communication? Is it insightful? Is it meaningful? Is it engaging? Right? Do I have enough right brain features in my piece of content, which will inspire and engage the audience, to react in the desired manner? So first thing is obviously is to be honest to yourself whether your content has that pull, that power to capture people's imagination and attention. Second piece, obviously, when we embark on a media campaign, right? my fellow panelists said that, in isolation, it doesn't work, right? And there is a recent research that has been unveiled by Mark Ritson, and he says that, brands with positive ESOV, right? If they add radio alongside with other media, it will have large brand effects, right? At a very modest amount of investment, right? So you can definitely generate that plus, right? You can definitely get incremental reach at a much lesser cost, right? And you can obviously amplify, because on other media, it may be very expensive to explain the product, right? It becomes far easier on media like radio, right? Wherein you can engage and you can reveal more about the product, right? And obviously, then there has to be predefined KPIs, whether you are measuring the performance on brand metric, whether you are measuring the performance of the campaign on engagement rates, conversation, how much of that is happening. Okay. So it has to be thought through in a holistic way. And obviously, it will be guided fundamentally by your brand objective. What is your objective?
So I feel it's simple. If you're looking to hit the top of funnel, you go with a hammer strategy. End of the day, it's not just one medium. You go with multiple mediums, and radio should be a part of that plan. It's as simple as that. Like we say on digital today, you just don't do a meta ad. You do not only meta, you do Google, you do the other ad networks, and plus. It's the same way in the ATL as well. You just don't do print. You do print as well as an outdoor, as well as the radio. It's a 4-time frequency, often visible medium. A consumer tomorrow will not come up to you and tell you he saw your ad or heard you. They will know about you. That's more important. So yes, radio should be a part of your plan when you're looking at a top of funnel, and we all know it. Top of funnel is expensive, but we always try to go for bottom of funnel because we're being conservative with our spends.
In fact, to your point, Chandan, what you started doing now is understanding the brand metrics from the client, and we're doing pre-post studies with Nielsen or other people so that we can show you the power of the campaign and power of the medium. So whether it's awareness, whether it's engagement, loyalty, whatever is the metric of the campaign, we do a pre-study in some of the markets and then do a post-study to make you feel what is the steps that we have taken. And
when we say plus, I'm just very curious out here. The audience still remains the same, right? The fact of the matter is that, okay, I was first reaching out to this audience through the medium of audio, which is through radio. But then I moved to the digital platform to catch hold of a similar audience or a lookalike audience in that zone. And then I moved to, say, another platform, say, for example, like, I become a little more in terms of, so yeah, in fact, you have a smile on your face. I want to quickly hear you.
Because I want to.
Because I think that will actually solve the mystery for all of us, right?
So actually, very valid observation. However, it's almost like the moment you are. So, for example, you are doing a multimedia communication or ad campaign. You have a bigger TG, of course. You have a larger TG in mind. However, then you dissect the TG into multiple cohorts and you sharpen communication basis the platform that you're using. So you would be using print for a certain TG cohort communication. So there would be a mix that is where print would be more pertinent. Similarly, there would be a mix where digital and meta campaigns would be more pertinent. The similar logic also applies to radio. When I'm a radio fraternity, if I'm only on broadcast or airwaves, I'm reaching out to a certain section or strata of society. The moment I shift to social, the social platform, any which way, is governed by youth, Gen Z, predominantly. All right. I'm not saying the higher age band is not there, but predominantly it's by the digital native, which is the youth, Gen Z. 24 to 35 is the age band that is there sitting in, social. So the TG drastically changes. While in radio, maybe that ratio changes from, working professionals in the morning to, housewives in the afternoon
to college goers in the, pre evening band, then again office goers in the evening band, and late evening it's again youth who are hooked on to, because late evening you would have programs like Love Sex Dhoka, your Pyar Ka Panchnama, Love Guru, and things like that, who are talking about relationships and all. So that's how the TG diversifies through the day. However, the same thing happens when the moment you go to social media, there is a different cohort you are reaching out to. Now, there is a third aspect of it. The moment you go to a podcast, again, genre-wise, the specification changes. So if you're doing, a self-help sort of a podcast, there would be a different section of audience that will be listening to you. Similarly, if it is mythology, if it is Ramayana, if it is Mahabharata, there would be a different kind of people who would be listening. Maybe you would, get certain other sections that these kind of podcasts are most heard during the morning hours, during the evening hours. This is the age band, and that is how, the TG differs. Now, all of these are the plus that I'm talking about. The fourth plus is the live events that we do. Now, the live events is absolutely youngsters that we are reaching out to. I mean, these are the new age music artists who want to actually talk to only the youth, the youngsters. Again, if you're curating something as an IP, if you've created something for a little older age band, maybe you're reaching out to the entire family. So the mother, the father with the kid is, kind of frequenting to the festival. So the TG changes with every avenue that you are opening. There will be an overlap. But then there is a exclusive audience also which is sitting.
Super. I asked your question, maybe.
That's okay. Our time is up, and I think we did a good job in 30 minutes. So thank you so much, guys, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we just request our assistant editor, Sonam. Sonam, if you can just do us the honor of giving a token of appreciation to all our ML panelists, of course, starting with Jahan. Jahan, we just request you to please step forward. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for all our panelists for taking out their valuable time today. Bhavin, thank you so much for joining us today. A bigger round of applause. Ahad, thank you. Chandan, thank you so much. Come on, everyone, let the applause continue. Sujay, thank you so much. Thank you, Mona Lisa, for joining us. The one who is clapping, I'm clapping for you. Yeah. Atul, thank you so much. And may we request all of you to please come together for a group photograph. You cannot leave this moment wherein the hashtag golden mics is even more prevalent when you have such dignitaries on stage. So let's give them a mighty round of applause to thank them for their contribution to the platform. And of course, they've important to do a lot to be said and a lot done for all our brand leads and all our FM heads. So with that, we'd like to humbly thank each and every one of you. This brings us to the conclusion of our conference. You've been a fabulous audience, so thank you once again. But request all of you now, please, along with your personal belongings, step out as it's time for us to gear up for Golden Bikes, the 12th edition on the other side. May we request you all to kindly vacate the room. This is me, Bhavna Bhatia, signing off for today, and thank you for being such a kind audience.
Oh,